Hello, and welcome to Chapter 10, Facilitating Purposeful Meetings. Today I'm joined by Ewan Bailey, who is the Director of Professional Learning and Development at Suzhou Singapore International School. A little backstory to why I'm so excited to have Ewan joining us is many years ago, it must have been about 6 or 7 years ago, I facilitated a middle leadership workshop at SSIS, and I ended up probably learning more from them than they did for me in such a way that I incorporated a lot of SSIS's meeting practices into my middle leadership workshop that even today still exist. So without further ado, I really want to introduce somebody that I've enjoyed working with over the years. Ewan, can you give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself?
Sure, Mike. Thanks for having me. So my name's Ewan Bailey. I'm the Director of Professional Learning and Development at SSIS, and I've been at the school for 6 years. In my role over the last couple of years, one of the key things that I do is work on the professional growth of staff across the school. So that's from pre-nursery all the way up to grade 12. And I work with leadership teams in both divisions to support middle leaders in working with their teams and ensuring that all staff within the school are continually developing their practice with the aim of ensuring that we provide an excellent international education for our students. So, there's a lot of aspects to the role, but something that I particularly enjoy about it is creating that culture where everyone really does focus on their professional growth.
Hey, getting into the topic today, I'm just going to begin with the devil's advocate question. Do we need meetings? And if so, why?
It's a question that a lot of people ask, and I think that when it comes to a meeting in and of itself, well, it really depends. I think that meetings that are effective are essential. However, I think everyone is aware of and has experienced meetings that are ineffective. And I think that the key is really ensuring that what we deliver is the models and the training for all facilitators in meetings to make meetings purposeful and to make them worthwhile. I don't think we can do without them. I think they're the glue that can bind professional teams together. But in saying that, they have to be effective, and that doesn't happen by chance. There's a lot of skill and a lot of planning that goes into that.
So we talked about being purposeful, and one of the things I talk about in the book is this difference between transactional work and transformational work. So I'm assuming in terms of purposeful and effective meetings, we're talking about the purpose of a meeting then largely falling into that latter side of being transformational. I just kind of want to build on that in terms of, what is your expectation from your middle leaders that if they're facilitating a meeting, how are they making it purposeful?
I think that first and foremost, for a meeting to be effective, identifying its purpose is key. And I think that at its most basic, as you say in your book, keep making sure that it is a place where people make requests and promises, and that those things are followed up on. That's the absolute minimum for a meeting, and that could be transactional. And as you say, there are maybe other ways of doing that from time to time. But I think at an absolute minimum, that should be what a meeting can achieve. But for a team that meets regularly, I think it's essential that there's the opportunities for those meetings to be transformational. And I think that identifying what the meeting is for prior to the meeting itself is key in ensuring that people then understand what it is that they're being asked to bring to that meeting. And you talk about identifying whether it's a meeting where we're asking why, whether it's a meeting we're looking at how, or whether it's asking what. Where we're just asking about what, that's quite a transactional thing to do. How we do things might build on from what it is that we're doing. And those are where a lot of meetings will tend to sit a lot of the time, right? Because there's just stuff that needs to get done. And I think that, the coordinating that can be effective face to face. But as you say, there are other ways of doing that outside of a meeting. And where, I think meetings can be incredibly powerful is when you're able to switch tack or change tack and actually look at why and ask really big questions and get people to bring really meaningful contributions. And so transformational meetings will be able to focus on those questions about why we're doing things to then link back to how it might be done.
So that's a really
go on.
I was just going to say, that's a really good point that, as a middle leader facilitating these meetings, you have to be able to address the why.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, depending on the time of year, depending on type of meeting that you're having, you may be in different spaces. You might be focused on the what and the how. And I think if that's very clear, then people are absolutely okay with that. It's productive. But being able to move towards the why, really gives a sense of purpose beyond just getting stuff done.
So here's a really good question for you then. We know we want to get to why. We know we want to make these meetings purposeful. So, how do you in your role help your middle leaders and their teams move beyond transactional? What are you doing to capacity build them to ensure that they're attending to the why?
I think that first and foremost, we have a PLC model from Daniel Venables. So there's a few different models out there. There's Richard DeFor's. I think that the particular model that you follow is not the key thing, but actually having something that aspires to be more than just a transactional meeting is essential. So I think that, we've got this professional learning community model, and it allows us to identify clear roles within a meeting, which creates, a professional structure where, there is an agenda, there is a facilitator, there is a timekeeper, there's a minute taker, there's an expectation that things run on time. So I think actually getting the basics right is very important for being able to then build on those foundations. And so, I think that when it comes to developing that culture, one of the things that I always look at when I go into a meeting is I always think that the way that a meeting operates tends to reflect the culture of the team. I would have said maybe it reflected the culture of the school before, but I've seen such variation in how meetings are done within a school that, I think it really does actually show a lot about the leader of that team and the way that the team interact with each other. So I think that, that's what it reflects. And I believe that, by actually having clear responsibilities and clear structure, then it creates room for that culture to develop.
All right. So
it allows it to go beyond the basic standard culture that would come as a result of just putting those people together in the first place.
Yeah. So instead of focusing, say, on any one particular team and focusing on improving, say, their meeting practices, you set out a standard for what you want to be achieved across the school by using the model. And then through that medium and that sort of continuity in practice, then you can support the teams focusing more on the why and less on those sort of items such as getting meetings started on time, holding each other accountable. Because one of the things that I do address in the book is that the easiest way to undermine a meeting is by people not attending to those easy items, being on time and whatnot.
Yeah, I think and it's so easy to do. I would say that the normal practice for any team that sets out a set of norms for how they're going to interact with each other, I think that creating them at the beginning is very simple. And I would say almost all teams will do that. At SSIS, all teams definitely will. So that's a standard thing at the beginning. What separates out effective meetings from ineffective meetings, and I would go further and perhaps say that effective teams from ineffective teams is the capacity to actually uphold and develop those norms. So rather than seeing them as a box to be ticked, right, we've got norms, we're done. It's these are actually there for a genuine purpose. And I think that can often be a challenge in convincing people that are new to a PLC culture that actually, if you stick with it and you go through the uncomfortable stages at the beginning, the sort of storming phase, then you can actually get to a situation where your team has got some really strong norms in place where you're able to have incredibly difficult conversations. And that's really, I think, where like great teams are separated from others, is their capacity to operate in the most difficult circumstances.
So now here's a really good question for you to end on, is because now you're addressing the fact that, all right, we have the norms, but there's this storming stage where what I say in the book is the middle leader's most important role is now holding the team accountable for it, those norms, and demonstrating to them how to do that, so you can move into that norming stage where they're holding each other accountable. So, you know, in your particular role, when you work with middle leaders, how do you help them move from being a supervisor that's just making sure people are doing things to getting them to do things together as a facilitator?
You know, I think that the key is for them to like see their team as being more than just a transactional group of people. So, you know, I think establishing what they believe the purpose of their team is and what they think their team is capable of. And it's really around having high expectations. So if they have high expectations, which, you know, I think most people aspire to those expectations, but perhaps aren't always in a position or don't feel like they've got the vision to take them from where they are now to where they would aspire to be. And I think that getting there is the challenge. So helping them to really focus on, when they're developing the norms, setting the stall out, like, what is it that you want this team to be? What is the vision for this team? And I think that if you can develop that with the team at the beginning, you've got something that's bigger than any individual meeting to refer to when it comes to reinforcing the norms. So that's something that, you know, is key to identify. It's like, not only like, how do you want to interact with each other, but why are you a team? Like, why are you doing this together? And that makes it so much easier to then address some of the niggly issues that always creep up in teams throughout a year, where, like, you know, there's the dominant individual who is not letting others get their opinion in. There's the quiet individual that isn't giving their opinion at all. And, you know, it's being able to actually address these very subtle norm infractions, but not because it's all about the norms, because it's actually about creating something that is bigger than just the team and the meeting it's having. It's because we have this purpose. What that purpose is, I think it's important for teams to identify that, not for the school to dictate it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have our mission and vision as a school, which is an anchor, right? That's the what we would expect them to anchor it around. But what's their purpose within that?
Yeah, and that's a really powerful point to end on, in the sense that, hey, if you want to have really effective meetings and you want to facilitate purposeful meetings, you got to have a purpose to begin with. And if you don't have that, don't expect your meetings to be anything more than transactional. You talked about getting niggly in terms of like the various aspects of a meeting, in terms of someone dominating, someone avoiding, people coming late, working on their laptop. If they don't feel connected to the purpose of that meeting, their attention is going to wane. And we need to be sensitive to the fact that if there are norm infractions, there's probably something more than just that person trying to or not adhering to our norms. There's something more to that. They're not really feeling connected to the purpose of that meeting. So maybe we should reflect on ourselves first as a leader.
Absolutely.
Before we start holding them accountable to something that they're not in themselves bought into. Yeah.
I mean, look, like I could go on all day about this stuff, because I'm really passionate about it. I do think that it's such a complex thing. Like at the surface, a meeting appears quite straightforward, and it is if all you're trying to do is get people to ask for things and promise to deliver on things. But when you get into what you've just referred to there, you're really talking about that culture of seeking first to understand other people's perspectives, and I think that's something that SSIS has at its core is, even when it comes to norm infractions, it's not about, slapping the wrist down and saying you infracted the norms. It's about opening that conversation and, using tools like the Experience Cube, where, you can understand the different perspectives that people have and what we actually want as an outcome. I think that there's just so much there. Like, it's such a complex thing because we're talking about people interacting in a really dynamic space in an organization where there's lots of other things going on, and actually having that clear purpose and having the skill as the facilitator, to manage that and develop a team. It's really, something well worth aspiring to for any middle leader, and it's a genuine achievement for anyone that manages it.
That's amazing, Ewan. I just want to thank you for really wrapping up this particular chapter's discussion, especially on that last point that, leading an effective meeting isn't just something we do, it's something we should be aspiring to. Because, when you reflect on a good meeting, people walk out of there feeling empowered, they know what they're doing, and, they're leaving that meeting having that sense of belonging to that team, recognizing themselves as part of something. So again, Ewan, thank you for really closing out on that. And I look forward to future conversations and work with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.